Two empires, two systems of loyalty. One built on blood oaths in the streets of New York, another forged in legal agreements within the most secretive offices of Silicon Valley. John Gotti maintained the silence of the Gambino family with omerta. Tim Cook protects Apple's secrets with ironclad contracts and corporate culture. Both understood something fundamental. Whoever controls information controls power. But which system was truly more effective? Fear or contract? The answer reveals strategic lessons every entrepreneur should know. Section 2. Johann Gotti's context. John Gotti wasn't born powerful. He grew up in the streets of the Bronx, in a neighborhood where survival depended on loyalty and silence. At 12, he was already working for the local mob. At 30, he was a respected soldier. At 45, he became the boss of the Gambino family, one of the 5 most powerful crime families in the United States. His rise wasn't by chance. Gotti understood early on that power in that world wasn't built solely through violence, but through a system of unwavering loyalty. And that system had a name, omerta. Omerta wasn't simply a rule. It was an ancestral code imported from Sicily, passed down from generation to generation. It meant absolute silence before authorities. No member could cooperate with police, testify in trials, or reveal information about the organization. Breaking omerta wasn't just betrayal, it was a death sentence. Blood oaths sealed this pact. New members underwent specific rituals, an image of a saint burning in their hands while they pronounced vows of eternal loyalty. Blood from a pricked finger symbolized they would rather die than talk. These ceremonies weren't theater. They were profound psychological contracts that linked personal identity with belonging to the group. For decades, this system worked with lethal precision. The Gambino family operated multi-million-dollar illegal businesses, extortion, loan sharking, union control, drug trafficking. And no one talked. FBI investigations crashed against an impenetrable wall of silence. Gotti elevated this system to another level. He was charismatic, visible, and defiant. The media called him the Teflon Don because no criminal charges could stick to him. Between 1986 and 1990, he faced 4 major trials. He was acquitted in all of them. How did he do it? Witness intimidation, bought juries, and above all, absolute loyalty from his inner circle. His men knew that informing meant not only their own death, but potentially that of their families. Fear was the cement of the system. But there was also another component: belonging. Being part of the Gambino family meant status, protection, identity. Members weren't just employees, they were blood brothers. They shared victories, risks, and a code of honor that transcended the legal. Gotti built an empire where secrecy was the most valuable currency. Each member held compartmentalized information. No one knew more than necessary. Orders were transmitted in person, never by phone. Meetings were held in noisy public places where wiretaps were useless. This information management model kept the Gambino family operational for more than 50 years. It generated fortunes estimated in hundreds of millions of dollars. And it turned Gotti into a legend of organized crime. But every system has a breaking point, and Gotti's would come from within. Section 3. Tim Cook context. Tim Cook wasn't born at the top either. He grew up in Alabama, son of a shipyard worker and a pharmacy employee. He studied industrial engineering, worked at IBM for 12 years, and in 1998 arrived at Apple as Vice President of Operations. In 2011, after Steve Jobs' death, he assumed the role of CEO of one of the planet's most valuable companies. But Cook didn't just inherit innovative products. He inherited something valuable and dangerous: industrial secrets worth billions of dollars. When Cook arrived at Apple, the company had already developed a culture of productive paranoia. Steve Jobs had built it piece by piece. Every product launch was a global event because no one knew what was coming. Every detail was kept hidden until the last moment. This ability to surprise the market was a direct competitive advantage. Cook understood that protecting information wasn't optional. It was strategic survival. In an industry where leaks can ruin launches, where competitors study every move, where suppliers could sell data to the highest bidder, absolute control of information was pure power. The system Apple implemented under Cook has multiple layers. The first, exhaustive confidentiality agreements. Every employee, from engineers to cleaning staff, signs NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, upon entry. These legal contracts establish precise consequences: multi-million-dollar lawsuits, immediate dismissal, impossibility of working again in the tech industry. But contracts are just the beginning. Apple operates under the need-to-know principle: absolute compartmentalization. Teams work on projects without knowing how they fit into the final product. An engineer can design a component without knowing what device it's for. Prototypes are kept in unmarked black boxes. Offices have restricted areas with biometric access. The case of the original iPhone is legendary. In 2006, the project had the codename Project Purple. Only 30 people at Apple knew the full scope of the device. Engineers worked in separate buildings with security guards. Internal presentations used fake images. Even senior executives had partial information. Cook perfected this model. He implemented constant security audits, tracking systems for every prototype, immediate internal investigations before any leak, and real consequences: publicly fired employees, lawsuits that reached the media as warnings. In 2012, an employee lost an iPhone prototype in a bar. Apple didn't just fire him. They initiated legal action and coordinated with authorities an investigation that became national news. The message was clear: there's no margin for error. But Apple also built culture, not just punishments. Employees receive extraordinary benefits: above-market salaries, company stock, top-tier facilities, challenging projects. Working at Apple means professional status. Belonging to that culture generates pride. Loyalty isn't just bought with legal fear. It's cultivated with shared purpose. This system has protected industrial secrets for decades. It has allowed Apple to launch products that redefine markets. It has turned every keynote into a global event with billions of dollars at stake. And unlike other empires, this one keeps working. Section 4. Direct comparison. Control mechanisms. Two systems. Two ways to guarantee silence. But when analyzed in detail, the differences reveal completely opposite philosophies about how to build loyalty. Gotti built his system on blood and honor. The oaths weren't legal documents. They were existential bonds. A member of the Gambino family didn't sign a contract. They participated in a ritual where literal blood sealed the commitment. Loyalty wasn't professional. It was tribal. The family was everything: identity, protection, purpose. Leaving the organization didn't mean resigning from a job. It meant betraying a brotherhood they had sworn to defend with their lives. Cook built his system on contracts and legal structure. Apple employees signed documents dozens of pages long with specific clauses, defined jurisdictions, and detailed consequences. The relationship is professional from the start. There are no blood rituals. There are signatures, legal witnesses, and lawyers reviewing every word. Loyalty is transactional: protection of secrets in exchange for salary, benefits, and career opportunities. In Gotti's world, breaking the silence had one outcome: death. There were no appeals, no second chances. Omerta was absolute. Testifying against the family meant immediate sentence. And not just for the traitor. Families also paid the price. Violence was the enforcement mechanism. Fear was the deterrent. Decades of history confirmed that no one survived betrayal. In Cook's world, breaking the silence has devastating but not physical legal consequences. Apple can sue for millions of dollars. It can destroy professional careers with a single call to other tech companies. It can guarantee that no major company will hire the violator again. The judicial system backs these actions. Courts consistently rule in Apple's favor, but no one dies. The violence is legal, not physical. Gotti used a combination of fear and belonging. The fear of consequences was real and immediate. But there was also tribal pride. Being part of the Gambino family meant respect on the streets, community protection, and shared identity. Members weren't disposable employees, they were brothers. They shared victories, risks, and an ancestral code that transcended generations. Loyalty arose from both terror and perceived honor. Cook uses economic and cultural incentives. Apple employees earn exceptional salaries. They receive stock that can generate personal fortunes. They work on projects that define industries. They belong to a corporate culture considered global elite. Pride doesn't come from blood rituals but from professional achievements. The motivation isn't to avoid violence, it's to maximize personal benefits while contributing to something perceived as transcendent. The Gambino family, at its peak under Gotti, controlled several hundred active members. The structure was pyramidal and closed. Entry required direct approval from superior leaders. The organization operated mainly in New York and surrounding areas. It was powerful but geographically limited. Apple under Cook manages more than 160,000 global employees. It works with hundreds of suppliers in dozens of countries. Every business partner signs confidentiality agreements. The scale is exponentially greater. And yet, it maintains control over critical information at a planetary level. Two empires. Two methods. One built on ancestral tradition and violence. Another on modern contracts and legal consequences. But which one really worked better? Section 5. Real effectiveness. DID the work. Theory is one thing. Results are another. Both systems promised absolute silence. Both generated empires. But when measured by durability and real effectiveness, the differences are brutal. For more than 20 years, omerta worked with precision. The Gambino family operated illegal businesses valued at hundreds of millions of dollars annually. The FBI invested massive resources in investigations. They installed wiretaps, followed movements, and pressured witnesses, and they crashed against an impenetrable wall of silence. Gotti personally faced 4 major trials between 1986 and 1990. He was acquitted in all of them. Prosecutors had circumstantial evidence, but no direct testimony. Witnesses recanted. Juries voted innocence. The judicial system couldn't penetrate the code of silence. But in 1991, everything collapsed. Sammy Gravano, known as the Bull, was Gotti's underboss, his right hand. He had participated in 19 confirmed murders. He was considered the organization's most loyal soldier, the man who would never talk. He talked. Gravano agreed to testify in exchange for sentence reduction. He provided exhaustive details about operations, murders, and command structures. His testimony destroyed Gotti's defense. In 1992, Gotti was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. He died in prison 10 years later. Why did the system fail? Because fear has limits. Gravano faced overwhelming federal evidence. He knew he was going to prison anyway. Loyalty based on terror works until the terror of legal consequences exceeds the terror of the organization. When the FBI offered a way out, the ancestral code of blood evaporated in the face of rational incentives. The Gambino family never recovered its power. Chain informing followed. The Blood Oath system proved fragile when external pressures exceeded internal ones. Apple has maintained control over its industrial secrets since 1998, when Cook arrived and perfected it in the following 2 decades. It has launched revolutionary products maintaining strategic surprise: the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, the Apple Watch, the M1 chips. Each launch surprised the market. Have there been leaks? Of course. In 2010, an employee lost an iPhone prototype in a California bar. In 2016, specialized sites published images of leaked components. But these leaks were controlled. They never compromised complete launches, and they always had consequences. Public firings, multi-million-dollar lawsuits, exhaustive internal investigations. What's remarkable is the scale. Apple handles critical information with 160,000 employees, hundreds of global suppliers, and supply chains in dozens of countries. And it maintains operational control over secrets worth billions in competitive advantage. Why does it work? Because it combines legal structure with corporate culture. Contracts are binding and backed by judicial systems. Consequences are real but proportional. And incentives are aligned. Employees earn more by keeping secrets than by selling them. Gotti's system collapsed under external pressure. Cook's system adapts and persists. One depended on ancestral tradition. The other depends on modern structure. The results speak for themselves. Section 6. Deep analysis. What made each system powerful? Beyond superficial mechanisms, each system worked for specific psychological and structural reasons. Understanding what made them powerful reveals principles applicable to any organization that needs to protect critical information. The omerta system wasn't just a set of rules. It was an existential narrative. Members of the Gambino family didn't see themselves as criminal employees. They perceived themselves as guardians of a century-old tradition imported directly from Sicily. The code of silence wasn't corporate policy. It was ancestral heritage. This narrative generated deep loyalty because it connected with personal identity. Breaking omerta didn't mean violating a labor contract. It meant betraying centuries of history, dishonoring previous generations, destroying one's own identity as a man of honor. The psychological weight was overwhelming. Additionally, mythology reinforced the system. Stories of executed traitors circulated constantly. They weren't abstract threats. They were concrete warnings backed by decades of real precedents. Each member knew names, dates, methods. Fear wasn't theoretical. It was tangible and documented in blood. But this model had a fundamental weakness. It depended on tribal cohesion that doesn't scale or adapt. It worked in closed communities with shared values. It collapsed when members faced external incentives more powerful than tribal identity. Gravano chose 5 years in prison with federal protection over life imprisonment with mob honor. Identity lost against rationality. Apple's system works for completely different reasons. It doesn't depend on ancestral mythology or tribal identity. It depends on rational alignment of incentives and predictable consequences. Employees keep secrets because they earn more staying at Apple than selling information. Salaries are competitive. Company stock generates real wealth. Career opportunities within Apple exceed any one-time payment for leaks. The economic equation favors loyalty. Additionally, the legal system backs the consequences. An employee who leaks information doesn't face abstract violence from a criminal organization. They face specific, quantifiable lawsuits processed in public courts with clear precedents. Consequences are predictable and legally documented. There's no ambiguity. Compartmentalization is also key. Employees literally can't leak what they don't know. An engineer working on a specific component doesn't have access to the complete product design. Even if they wanted to sell information, their knowledge is limited and therefore less valuable. The structure reduces risk systemically. And finally, Apple built culture around secrecy. It's not just policy, it's part of corporate identity. Employees feel pride in working on secret projects that will surprise the world. Mystery generates internal excitement. Keeping secrets isn't a burden, it's a privilege. This model scales globally because it doesn't depend on specific cultural values or ancestral traditions. It works in California, China, Ireland, or India. Contracts are universal. Economic incentives transcend borders. Legal structure adapts to local jurisdictions. Gotti built loyalty from fear and emotional belonging. Cook built loyalty from rational incentives and legal structure. One appealed to the tribal heart. The other appeals to strategic calculation. What builds true and lasting loyalty? The answer defines which system survives generations. Section 7. Alison's applicable to business. These two extreme models reveal fundamental principles about how to protect critical information in any organization. It's not about glorifying crime or idealizing corporations. It's about extracting strategic lessons applicable to real businesses. Lesson 1. Clear contracts are the foundation, not the exception. Apple demonstrates that information protection begins with explicit legal documentation. Every employee, supplier, and partner signs detailed confidentiality agreements. There's no ambiguity about what information is confidential, what constitutes violation, and what the specific consequences are. Many companies operate with verbal agreements or generic contracts. This generates vulnerability. When critical information leaks, there are no legal mechanisms to act. The lesson is direct. Document everything. Clearly define what information is sensitive. Establish specific and legally backed consequences. Well-drafted contracts aren't bureaucracy. They're protection infrastructure. Lesson 2. Fear doesn't build lasting teams. The collapse of Gotti's system reveals an uncomfortable truth. Loyalty based exclusively on fear is fragile. It works under stable conditions. It collapses when external pressures appear superior to internal terror. In business contexts, managing teams with constant threats generates a toxic environment. Employees stay for lack of options, not for genuine commitment. When better alternatives arise, they leave without looking back. And worse yet, they can take valuable information as revenge. The lesson? Build a culture where loyalty arises from shared purpose, not coercion. The best teams protect information because they believe in the project, not because they fear punishment. Lesson 3. Culture plus legal structure is the powerful combination. Apple doesn't depend only on contracts or only on culture. It combines both strategically. Legal agreements establish clear consequences. Corporate culture generates pride and emotional commitment. Together they create a robust system where loyalty is both rational and emotional. Companies that only have culture without legal structure are vulnerable to leaks without response mechanisms. Companies that only have contracts without culture generate cold environments where employees fulfill legal minimums without real commitment. The lesson: invest both in professional legal documentation and in organizational culture building. Both pillars are necessary. Neither is sufficient alone. Lesson 4. Strategic compartmentalization protects critical information. Apple's need-to-know model is applicable to any industry. Not everyone needs to know everything. Compartmentalizing information reduces the risk of massive leaks and limits the potential damage of any individual violation. In practice, define access levels according to specific roles. Marketing teams don't need complete technical details. Developers don't need confidential financial strategies. Each person accesses only information necessary for their function. This isn't distrust. It's an intelligent security architecture. Lesson 5. Create loyalty by aligning incentives with purpose. Apple employees protect secrets because their personal interests are aligned with the company's success. They receive stock, performance-linked bonuses, and growth opportunities. Leaking information destroys their own wealth. The lesson: design compensation systems where employees earn more when the company wins. This doesn't just mean high salaries. It means real participation in results, continuous professional development, tangible recognition. When protecting information directly benefits the individual, loyalty becomes a personal, strategic decision, not imposed obligation. Two empires, opposite principles. Universal lessons about how to build organizations where critical information remains protected without destroying teams in the process. Two empires built on secrets. One fell from within. The other continues dominating its industry. John Gotti protected information with blood oaths, ancestral rituals, and absolute fear. For decades it worked, until it didn't work anymore. Because terror has limits. Because tribal loyalty collapses under sufficient external pressure. Because no system based exclusively on violence survives generations. Tim Cook protects information with legal contracts, strategic compartmentalization, and aligned incentives. It doesn't depend on mythology. It doesn't need rituals. He built a scalable, adaptable system backed by legal structures that transcend individuals. The initial question was, which guardian of secrets was more powerful? The answer isn't simple. Gotti maintained absolute control for 2 decades in a hostile environment where the consequences of failing were deadly. That requires real power. But that power was finite. It depended on uncontrollable factors: emotional loyalty, tribal cohesion, absence of superior external incentives. Cook built something different, a system that doesn't depend on specific individuals or particular cultural values. It works because structure backs it. It persists because incentives are rationally aligned. In business, as in life, the strategy chosen defines the legacy. One can build on fear or on structure, on tradition or on adaptability, on emotional loyalty or on rational incentives. Both paths generate results. But only one builds empires that transcend generations. The final lesson is clear. Protecting critical information doesn't require blood oaths. It requires intelligent contracts, inspiring culture, and correctly aligned incentives. That combination is more powerful than any ancestral ritual. Because in the end, sustainable loyalty isn't imposed. It's built. If this analysis made you think differently about how to protect information in your business, leave me your opinion in the comments. Which system seems more effective to you? Would you use any of these principles in your company? Subscribe to the channel for more deep analyses comparing opposite strategies from the world of business and organized crime. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share the video. See you in the next analysis.